following is a special presentation of the Hatboro Horsham Television Network.
Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dennis Williams, and I am the proud principal here at Hatboro Horsham High School. I want to welcome you to our building on this beautiful spring morning and thank all of you for joining us for the 2017 Hatboro Horsham Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Before we begin the ceremony, I'd like to start and honor this great country as we always do for all of our most important events. We're going to do our national anthem. First we're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Our flag is here, so I'd ask that you all please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask that you all please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem. It will be performed by our madrigals group under the direction of Mr. John Timmons, and following the national anthem for all of our graduates here, we will also sing the high school alma mater. And at this time, we can stop our slideshow. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I'd like to provide some historical context to this event. The HH Hall of Fame was formed in 1991 to honor alumni of Hatboro High School, Hatboro Horsham Senior High School, and to also recognize members of the school community. It was designed to recognize outstanding achievements or significant contributions that reaffirm the excellence of the HH educational experience. Since 1991, we've had 17 induction ceremonies and have seen over 100 individuals join this high school's Hall of Fame. The criteria for induction requires that a person have graduated from a high school in the district or completed service to our high school in some capacity. at least 10 years prior to nomination. After nominations are received, I facilitate a committee of 9 who engage in an extensive investigation of career and personal accomplishments before voting on the successful candidates for the induction class. I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to recognize the members of the committee and personally thank them for their efforts and their part in today's event. I'd ask that you hold your applause until I get through all names. Mrs. Kathy Haas, Mrs. Mary Beth Krevling, Ms. Lori Gallagher Landis, Mr. Ralph Wetzel, Mr. Dan Heisman, Mr. Ed Ott, Mr. Jim Worthington, Mr. John Kircher, and Mrs. Tammy Van Steenberg. Please join me in a round of applause for those members. I would also be negligent if I didn't give a special thank you, if there is such a thing, to my administrative assistant, Mrs. Angel Shands, Mrs. Mary Beth Krelling, and Mrs. Kathy Haas. They have done a tremendous job organizing this event, decorating this event, handling the luncheon, and every other detail that has allowed me to just show up and talk. That's not a bad arrangement. Today, we are inducting a class of 7 individuals who have gone beyond the call of duty in their chosen fields. All inductees have walked the halls of either Hatboro High School or Hatboro Horsham High School when it was located on Meeting House Road, now Keith Valley, or here. They have participated in many of the same sports, clubs, and activities that still exist in our building today. While others are responsible for the courses that you now take, or the exciting school events that help add to the amazing experience that you have as a Hatter. These individuals have left an indelible footprint in various career fields that include education, the arts, science, and business and military service. Besides the obvious networking that occurs through attending the same high school or working in the same high school, the common theme shared by this year's inductees is the expertise they have brought to those chosen fields, which either began or culminated in this school district. With that in mind, I am both honored and excited to help usher in this new class of Hall of Famers as they join the 17 induction classes before them. At this time, I'll now begin to introduce the class of 2017 inductees. A National Honor Society student will also serve, who has also served as their escort for the day, will escort all inductees to the stage. I hope that you noticed earlier that each inductee has a series of slides that serve to provide some insight as to who they are and what they accomplished both at the high school level and beyond. Our candidates have been asked to take 3 to 5 minutes to reflect on the importance of the education they received at this level and to share some experiences that may have had or may still have an impact on their lives. To our students, with over 350 of you in the audience today, it's my hope that the reflective words of our recipients have an impact on you and that you might, and who you might become as you choose your own path after Hatboro Horsham. Without further ado, I will now begin with our first celebrated guest. Our first honoree this morning, Mrs. Patricia Meck, class of 1963. Ms. Meck was a graduate of Hatboro Horsham High School, which used to be Hatboro High School, my apologies, which used to be located on York Road in Hatboro. Not sure how something like this could ever happen, but she managed to marry someone who graduated from Upper Moreland High School. I met her husband, Bill, earlier, and he seems like an okay person. Known by many simply as Patsy. She's made quite a name for herself, and one probably could have predicted this type of success way back during her high school years. The arts were her passion, as she was heavily involved in all drama projects, the drama club, the chorus, was a member of the National Thespian Association. In addition, she was an editor for the school newspaper, member of the student council, and was the Hat mascot. She then took that mascot costume off and was the captain of the Bucksmont Championship field hockey team as well. Patsy moved on from high school to continue her love of the arts and began writing and performing. She co-wrote and performed her own original comedy material through clubs in Philadelphia, New York, and Washington, D.C. As you can see from the presentation, she has had the chance to rub elbows with people we see on TV and movie screens for decades. In 2012, she was discovered by famed film director David Russell and was cast in Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle with Philadelphia's own Bradley Cooper. She was also in the movie Southpaw. In Playbook, she was cast as Bradley Cooper's mother, and at the 2013 SAG Awards, Bradley Cooper thanked her in his acceptance speech. Since then, she has been in numerous films, TV shows, and recently won Best Actress in the short film A Way of Life. The amazing part is that with all the aforementioned success, she didn't have to go to New York City. She didn't have to go to LA. She stayed right here in Hatboro, taking care of her family and enjoying the company of her friends. Ladies and gentlemen, for her contributions in the arts, please join me in welcoming class of 1963's own Patricia Mack.
Wow, I got nothing. Thank you. That was quite an introduction. This is such an unbelievable honor to be here today. I really don't feel as though I have earned it, so I'm going to graciously and humbly accept it real fast before somebody realizes there may have been a mistake. This school means so much to me. From 1st through 12th grade, it was not only the foundation of my education, but of my ideas, my hopes, my lasting friendships, my strategies. It was all right here. Plus, the district also is a big part of my heritage and my family. As you probably saw on the screen, my mom graduated in 1944 from what was the Hatboro High School. I graduated from that same building in '63. My 3 kids graduated from what is now Keith Valley. And my grandson Jordy graduated here last year, and I've got 2 more granddaughters, Claude and Liza, on their way up. I also did meet my husband here, that one from Upper Moreland, when he tried to get in our student council dance for free. Not on my watch, but that's how I met him. I love being a part of this district, then and now. Between my parents and the teachers I encountered at Hatboro Horsham High School, it just never occurred to me that I couldn't accomplish something, whatever it was, that I wanted to do. And there wasn't much I wasn't involved in. From one club to another, student council. In fact, my yearbooks a little bit resembled Where's Waldo. I was someplace on every page. I was the future something of America. I just tried everything, and I encourage you to do the same. Just try it. And of course, there was drama club. I always loved acting, and when I was a little girl, I would put on plays on my front porch and charge my mom a dime. And that was after she made my costumes and hung up the sheet as my curtain. So I've done that forever, but I was also very much into sports. And as Mr. Williams mentioned, actually Gene Stoll-Stewart was the coach who led us to the 1962 Bucksmont Championship. I believe that banner is still hanging in the gym and reflects the first year of a championship at our school, so I am very proud of that. My biggest conflict came in the spring of my first year at high school, because now it was time for basketball, but also the big show. What was I going to do? It turns out back then, girls' basketball was half court. Now, I was a defense player, which meant that even on the wildest possibility of my life that I could get that ball in that basket, no, I couldn't, because I was confined to half court. So the show it was. Out with basketball. And after that, under the direction of Barbara Little, my drama coach, my English teacher, and became my friend, I was involved in all kinds of plays, assemblies, skits, whatever was going on, best decision ever. And I continued after high school with classes, and as Mr. Williams said, I was half of a comedy team of Pats and Bob Rumnock, who was also an alumni of Hatboro Horsham. We wrote our own material. And then I eventually joined SAG and began to do extra work and get invited to auditions. And that landed me in LA for the SAG Awards. But the fact is, getting a part is tough. There might be 50 people out for that same role that you are, and only one can get it. And it is the craziest business ever. I could go to an audition and literally stink up the place with what I did, and I get that part. I go to an audition where a director gives me a direction, points at me and yells, "Perfect!" Never hear from them again. Go figure. I went to another part where they told me that I didn't look old enough to be a senior citizen. Now, unless I'm going to live to be 144, I don't think that I'm not a middle-aged person at that point. So now I'm letting my silver come in to convince them that I am too old enough. And last week, my agent put me in for a commercial that you had to be a certain age, and you had to have a BMI over 2.8. She called me back to tell me I didn't qualify. So I went out back, put on my bathing suit. Well, I put on my bathing suit before I went out back. Let me clear that up. I had my granddaughter take a picture of me, and I texted it to my agent with a note, "I am too fat enough." So I don't even know what kind of business this is that I'm in, but the point is there's a lot of rejection in this business, as there is in many avenues of our life. But what I gained from this community of teachers and family and friends was to keep a positive attitude, no matter what you're choosing to do. Put yourself out there. Make mistakes. Start over. Regroup. And don't waste any energy on regrets or coulda, shoulda conversations. The deepest meaning is don't ever give up, but be flexible. Keep all your options open. Look for opportunities. Take them, try them. I guess the most important thing I can say to you is if something that you're doing is confining you to half court, go do the other thing. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee, Mr. Thomas Tillett, class of 1970. Visionary business person who has used his myriad of skills to benefit our environment and humankind. Thomas Tillett graduated from HH and pursued his degree at the University of North Carolina, go Tar Heels. Mr. Tillett is best known for his amazing work in medicine that has benefited both human and animal kind. As the president and CEO of MBF Therapeutics, he helped develop innovative and humane vaccines to treat cancer in companion animals. As the founder and executive director of Sustained Acts, he focused on sustainable projects that supported a 120-child orphanage on the continent of Africa and fundraised an organization that treated 100,000 patients each year. For the last 8 years, Mr. Tillett has been the CEO of his own consulting firm, which focuses on life science and cell gene therapy. He was a member of the board of directors at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center and served a 3-year term on the board for the American School of Paris. However, he still remains local ties. He's back in the area and maintains his community and service-driven spirit as he serves on the board for Impact Thrift Stores and also Cheltenham Church. He has had a significant impact as a successful entrepreneur in the field of science and business focused on improving life conditions, and his accomplishments have local, national, and international impact. For his service, please join me in welcoming class of 1970, Mr. Thomas Tillett.
Thank you. This is certainly an honor and a privilege to be here today to receive this award. I've always been proud of my association with Hatboro Horsham, and the fact that our children also graduated from here makes this even more special. I'm also delighted to know that I can share this day with the mother of those 4 children, the love of my life, my wife, Lynn, who ironically is the only member of the family who didn't go here, and she was on the Hatboro Horsham Educational Foundation Board for many years. I had a great time in high school. I was active in sports, going to games, Key Club, and many other things. But I was also just a B student. I was an average soccer player, an average baseball player. When senior superlatives were announced, I was voted most school spirit. I mean, really, what's that? It wasn't one of the big E's, like best looking, obviously, most likely to succeed, or smartest, or most athletic. But my time here and my time at UNC shaped me. It gave me time to learn and to grow and discover what my God-given talents were. One of those was the desire to learn from those who are older and wiser than me. I've been very fortunate to have had a number of mentors that were willing to invest their time and share their wisdom with me. At UNC, it was Dr. C. Ritchie Bell, who made me his research assistant when I was only an undergrad, and fueled in me a love of scientific research, even though he only paid me $1.50 an hour. I got my first job at Roman Haas through a Hatboro Horsham classmate, Dr. Anna McLean, who now works down the road at the Horsham Veterinary Clinic. At that time, though, she worked for Roman Haas, and she told me about a job there. And even though I wasn't really qualified for it, I was hired by Dr. Ed Carley, who saw in me the potential as a scientist, even if I didn't have the educational experience they were looking for. My second boss, Jim Ryan, gave me multiple opportunities, including the opportunity to work in Europe, an assignment that not only changed my life, but the life of my family as well. My bosses in Europe, Marcello Gambarucci and Hervé Bellego, helped me to learn when to fight for a cause and when to let it go, and how a leader needs to set standards that are used as a benchmark for an entire organization. That also led me out of R&D and into a business career that provided me with experience that I would need to later go on to lead companies. Being able to think strategically has been crucial to my career development, and the best one I ever met was John Tillett, another Roman Haas senior executive. When I interviewed with him for the European marketing director position, he told me that he would be happy to give me this job if I simply had more experience in sales and marketing. And I said, John, look, I haven't been qualified for any job I've ever had at Roman Haas, and it's always worked out. Fortunately, he left, and he gave me that job. He also gave me an opportunity a year or so later to come back to the U.S. to lead the largest product acquisition our division had ever made. And then, after that, he then gave me the responsibility for determining how we would respond to the biotech revolution. The study that we did and I led eventually caused Roman Haas to form a biotech business, and eventually the formation of Reagene, the company I founded, and I think it's the reason why I'm here today. At Reagene, I had the privilege of working with an excellent team of scientists who were able to create some amazing technology. We created a revolutionary way to safely and precisely regulate therapeutic genes in the human body. This provided a critical safety mechanism for gene therapy, as well as a means of optimizing the dosing for each patient. The applications for this ReaSwitch therapeutic system are virtually endless, but the lead therapy that we were developing is now in phase 3 testing for a devastating disease, glioblastoma, or brain cancer, and the results in late-stage patients appear to double survival time. Over these past 10 years, God has been leading me in new directions. I've been giving back by mentoring others, both men and women, to help them in their careers, and I've had the opportunity to teach a course on servant leadership with my good friend Paul Kiesling. I started Sustained Acts, a Christian nonprofit that to date has raised over $1 million to support sustainable projects in Kenya, and I've done this with my friend Bruce Dernley, who's here today. We've also support the Kajabi Hospital, which is, Dennis mentioned, is a 340-bed hospital that treats 14,000 inpatients and 180,000 outpatients a year on only a $10 million budget. God has richly blessed my life. I have a great wife and a wonderful family, some great friends who have continued to help me grow and learn, a rich and diverse career that allowed me to help develop innovative therapeutics that can help save patients' lives. And now the opportunity to help save lives in a different way in Kenya. For all of that and more, I'm very grateful. I have a saying that I often use with my friends in Kenya. When God opens a door, walk through it. In many ways, it describes my life. If you had told me when I graduated from Hatboro Horsham in 1970, this is how my life would evolve, I would not have believed you. However, God opened many different doors for me over the years, and by walking through them, my life has been blessed. I would urge you, as you go through life, God will open doors of opportunity for you, many of them unexpected, and many of them will be challenging. But when He does, walk through them. Your life will be richer for it, and who knows, maybe one day you'll be standing up here as well. Thank you.
Our next inductee, Dr. William Kaprowski, class of 1972. He's being recognized this morning for his service to this great country and his business acumen. After graduating from high school, he went on to earn his degree from Temple University, then a master's degree from University of South Carolina, his PhD from Temple's Fox School of Business, and his law degree from USC, the University of Southern California. Dr. Kaprowski served our nation in the U.S. Army as a captain in the Medical Service Corps for 3 years. If that wasn't enough, he then went on to serve in the U.S. Navy Reserve, where he achieved the rank of lieutenant commander. Then he served for almost 2 decades as an administrator, management analyst, and served in the office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. Since his military service, Dr. Kaprowski has been a consultant who has coordinated USAID programs in Poland, taught healthcare, accounting, and financial management to senior government officials in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Slovakia. In addition, he was a college professor at Texas A&M University, where he taught health law and health economics to master's degree level students. Currently, he's a professor at the University of North Carolina, where he teaches management and accountancy. With an extremely rich and diverse background that also includes over 20 published articles in journals, Dr. Kaprowski has truly earned a place in this school's Hall of Fame for his exceptional military service to our country and his work in the world of business and education. Congratulations, class of 1972, Dr. William Kaprowski.
Working here. Wow, greetings. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is kind of a surprise in many ways. Unlike some of the other folks who were very active in high school, I wasn't. I was in a hurry to get home. I watched the Three Stooges, which no doubt encouraged the rest of my life. I played in a band. I would have loved to have played sports, but back then you couldn't have the hair and play sports at the same time. I went with the hair. Yeah, it was 45 years ago. It's like 315 in dog years. It's a long time, but some of my memories are quite vivid. And asked to kind of, okay, what influence did Hatboro have on me? And I need a little bit of help from you. Do you have any teachers here now that you would maybe describe as strange, weird, eccentric, maybe even bat guano crazy? Any? Oh, come. Well, two names come to mind for me, and one was a Latin teacher named Frank Mon. And the class was bad, and we were called in for detention. And this wasn't the usual detention where you just kind of go in there and slap your head down on the table and wait for the clock to run out. No, you went into the office. Frank Mong had a table like this with a chair on top of it. He sat in the chair like Julius Caesar. You had to come in, get on your knees, say, "Salute magister, mea culpa," which means, "Hello, teacher, it's my fault." He would then brush you off like that, and you just get up and leave. And best detention I ever had. And to this day, I still remember what mea culpa means, as well as the present tense verbs ending, OST, mustis ente, the future, bo bis bit, beams beatus bunt, the verb to be, summa is es, summus estis sum, the noun endings, usio umo, I ormisosis, I. Why? There's no need for it to be in there, but I can't get it out. And while you would think, you'll never use that stuff, my last job interview, the provost just happened to be a professor of classics. So when I could whip out those endings, it helped me. The second teacher that made a lasting impact on me was Richard Clayton. He was a geometry teacher, and there was one fire drill that occurred in winter. And we walked outside, and there was a student who will remain nameless, put together a giant snowball that he had planned to nail one of the other students with. And Mr. Clayton caught that student with the snowball, took the snowball, put it on the windowsill right above the radiator, and for the rest of the class, we just watched the snowball melt. And of course, he said, "You can have this back right after class." That was his kind of parting words. And I watched it melt, and as I was leaving, he said to me, "Did it melt from the top or the bottom?" I still don't know the answer. But what these folks did, and I know that they didn't follow their teaching or their learning plans. They were out of the mainstream. But what it did, and I think what many of those teachers at Hatboro did to me, is make me think a little bit differently, give me a different perspective, and make me kind of say, "What the hell? Why would you take a snowball and let it melt?" And as I think about that, I think that in many ways is what, if I had a natural curiosity in me, did it. And it's continued because, as was mentioned, I've had many careers, and I'm still looking. So if I were imparting some words to you folks, you don't have to know now. There's no urgency. Get out there and enjoy. Travel is a good thing. I've spent more than a fifth of my adult life either in Poland, Germany, Russia, when we used to be friends. No, we're not friends anymore. And Mexico and Guatemala. Learn a language. It's a great thing. Try, and I think this was brought to your attention. Try things. You know, if you don't try, you'll never succeed. If pride keeps you from failing, that's not a good thing. In business, I can't tell you the number of businesses that start out and fail. Try again, and eventually there's success. Now, having said that, don't get used to failure. That's not a good thing either. But try. Stay positive. Okay. Yeah. Always kind of look at the glass as being half full. And that's easy to do. And you're all from Philadelphia, right? Okay. How many of you watched the draft last night and said, "I know this Derek Barnett is going to take us to the Super Bowl. I know it's going to happen"? Okay. I'm an old guy, and the Eagles haven't been there got close twice, but haven't been there. But I'm still optimistic, okay? I am sure before I die, hopefully, that they will win a Super Bowl. So stay optimistic. And finally, some words that my mom imparted with me. She said, you know, you spend a third of your life sleeping, get a good mattress. Nope. And I believe she did say sleeping. The second part, she said, you know, you spend half your life on your feet. Get good shoes. Wow. Okay, good. And I would just like to add that I think you should all get a dog, because dogs will love you no matter what you do. Okay? And get a cat too, because they'll ignore you and blow you off no matter what you do too. So that balance is important in life. Okay. Finally, I just want to make sure this wasn't a mistake, right? I really am.
No, we already made the plaque.
Whew, thank you. I would like to thank my wife, Teresa, who's been with me since I was 15. Wow. My best friend that I met here in Hatboro, Mike Tillman, who is also here. His brothers, Doug and Bobby, we played in our band together, and of course, Gene and Bill, they're my second family, for sure. So I'm just thrilled to be here, and I wish you all success. And for many of you, the race is starting now. You don't know it, but the race is starting now. And so good luck to you all. Thank you.
Our superintendent, Dr. Curtis Griffin, is here. After this, I'd like to maybe get together and talk about our new detention program. Our next guest of honor, Mrs. Karen Fleeter. For many of our students in grades 10 through 12, I want you to know that at one point in this high school, there was another Fleeter in the building. All right, besides Mr. Fleeter, who many of you know, who just retired last year. I've never had the chance to have dinner with them, to be in their house while they have dinner, but I can only imagine Mr. Fleeter is going on telling these stories and engaging, and I could see Mrs. Fleeter rolling her eyes thinking, here we go again. This is a special recognition for me because as a high school student, I had the privilege of having Mrs. Fleeter as one of my English teachers. She may not remember this, but I vividly recall a Macbeth assignment where we were supposed to summarize the story in the way that we determined best. I remember a partner and I, Justin McGowan, we had this bright idea that we were going to kind of summarize Macbeth based on a popular song at the time. And we chose Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison. And for those of you that don't know the lyrics to that song, it was probably not a wise choice. All right? The only common theme between the story of Macbeth and that song was poison, the title. Nevertheless, I do believe we did it in perfect iambic pentameter. And Ms. Fleeter graciously pulled us aside and kind of explained where we had gone awry in our decision. As a teacher, Ms. Fleeter brought relevance to content, which at least to me was a positive thing. She had such an impact on students that, as you saw in the presentation, even the yearbook in my senior year was dedicated to her. She gave 30-plus years of dedicated service to Hatboro Horsham School District, teaching English, serving as the English department chairperson, and doing all of it with amazing style and an understanding of how students interact with teachers and how important the culture and climate of a building could be. She also grasped the role of clubs and activities outside of the classroom and their ability to connect students inside the classroom. While the event has morphed over time, Mrs. Fleeter and Mrs. Drexler, whom you'll hear from next, brought one of the most exciting events in our school, even some 28 years today. Red and Black Night. They brought that event to Hatboro Horsham. I had the privilege of coming back to Hatboro Horsham as the principal just 11 years after graduating and worked with Ms. Fleeter as a member of my department chair cabinet. For me, that helped to provide an even clearer picture of the remarkable educator and teacher leader that she was. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Mrs. Karen Fleeter.
Thank you, Dennis, for those kind words. And thank you so much to the Hall of Fame Committee for including me among these deserving and distinguished individuals. I am honored. When acquaintances asked, "What did you do to deserve this honor?" I simply replied, "My job." But as we all know, doing one's job has a vast number of interpretations depending upon the individual. From the beginning of my career, doing my job meant an entire way of life that went way beyond just showing up in the classroom every day. I am a doer, and to that end, I will share what doing my job meant during the good old days of Hatboro Horsham, and I never wanted to be old enough to use that phrase, the good old days. First, I looked forward to going to work every day. That's the truth. I knew that each day would bring challenges that I could embrace and continue to improve. Enjoying one's job makes it so much more satisfying. Looking back at my good old days and establishing my professional life in Hatboro Horsham was a wonderful opportunity. We worked in a supportive, nurturing environment where everyone worked as a single team to offer the best educational opportunities to students. Teaching was at the center of everything I did. My outside obligations revolved around school. My planning for classes took place constantly wherever I was. My husband and children recognized me best when sitting at soccer games or dance competitions with stacks of papers, not because I am a martyr, but because I had an obligation to give feedback to students in a timely fashion, and there were only so many hours in the day. My daily objective became to make every class period one where students could find some measure of success. As an educator, I have always believed in finding a way to make students want to return to class the following day. And so, the good old days at HH became brainstorming with colleagues about creative ideas, discussing new approaches to student engagement, supporting one another when ideas failed, and never giving up on initiating new ones the next day. In conjunction with my do-it-now attitude, I find that I'm an initiator of ideas. From day one, if there was a goal I wanted to achieve, I immediately made a plan to get there. I went through whatever channels were necessary, asked for assistance, and never waited for someone else to take the ball and run with it. In the classroom and out, I expected students to do the same. Reach for goals, plan carefully how to achieve them, and do not stop until you get there. Listening to others tell us this can't happen, this plan won't work, or this isn't practical are just excuses for us to be passive and do nothing. When obstacles appear, find another way. The good old days at Hatboro Horsham for me also included, as Dennis indicated, many aspects of the educational picture outside of the classroom. I so enjoyed watching student successes in activities, athletics, artistic, and musical ventures. To that end, I was involved with colleagues in initiating activities that to this day are traditions at the high school. Red and Black, Senior Field Day, senior camping trips, the variety show, and others. Planning and sponsoring the senior prom for over 15 years was another challenge I never shied away from because it was an important part of the senior year. While these took months of planning outside of the classroom, I believe I balanced family, classroom obligations, and the successes of students fairly well. This was a large part of making the job a lifestyle. So moving forward in life, I know only too well that the best intentioned advice is often ignored. But what I've learned and practiced in terms of doing my job is as follows. Don't wait for someone to do it for you. Don't remain a proud member of Procrastinators Anonymous. Do it now. Find something you are passionate about that is a realistic goal for you and make it happen. Figure out a plan to achieve that goal and follow it. Whatever life may throw your way, show up every day. Putting this advice in perspective, how will you define doing your job in the future? Thank you very much.
Our fifth honoree this morning, 30 years in the Hatboro Horsham School District. Mrs. Drexler, who began her career as a social studies teacher, transitioned to the guidance department where I believe she had her greatest and most profound impact. In fact, her fingerprints and guidance family tree still exist in our building, as every counselor on staff today was hired and mentored by Mrs. Drexler. She served as the department chairperson of the guidance department for decades while also successfully serving thousands of students during that time. Mrs. Drexler pushed students to excel beyond their believed capabilities and at times take risks despite their own insecurities. She developed long and lasting relationships with top-level college admissions officers near and far for the sole purpose of providing amazing post-secondary opportunities for Hatboro Horsham students. And those hadn't necessarily existed prior to her arrival. Mrs. Townsend, Mrs. Herman were her students who later became her colleagues, no doubt because of the impact and influence that she had on them and the way in which she connected, pushed, and encouraged them. It's difficult to mention Mrs. Fleeter and Mrs. Drexler in separate sentences. As you saw on the slideshow, the two became inseparable friends while on staff here at HH, and that bond continues even today. As the co-creator of Red and Black Night and events like the Variety Show, Alex's Lemonade Stand, senior class trips, it was Mrs. Drexler's understanding that students needed to be well-rounded and not just academic. An almost identical philosophy to the one that you heard previously. The amazing framed artwork that you see throughout our building was part of the legacy left by Mrs. Drexler. When I returned in 2004, as a young 29-year-old administrator about to take over a high school, I had the privilege to work closely with Mrs. Drexler to help reshape the high school with her new course offerings and opportunities that would provide HH students with the best possible experiences. Again, I got the chance to see up close and personal the queen of guidance and how she handled almost every situation with dignity, grace, and poise. Please join me in a round of applause for Mrs. Beryl Drexler.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Williams, for your kind words. I would also like to thank the Hatboro Horsham Hall of Fame Committee for selecting me as one of the inductees for the 2017 school year. To be honored for a job that I so thoroughly enjoyed for 30-plus years is certainly wonderful. Writing this speech, not so wonderful. as it was filled with mixed sentiments as I remembered the highs, the lows, the exuberance of the successes, and the pain of the failures. Like all good homework assignments, it was time for reflection, discovery, and truth. One of the most important things I learned during my time at Hatboro Horsham, first as a teacher, then as a guidance counselor, and finally as the director of guidance, is that truth matters. It is the cornerstone of life and success. For me, yes, the truth, sometimes difficult, always mattered. For those of you who do not know me, which is most of you, you should know that I did not pull any punches. This school allowed me a lot of latitude, and sometimes I ran with it and shouted the truths to the world, and sometimes I would tell quiet truths to frighten students in my office with the door closed. As an educator, my job was to listen and to explore the truth. This high school gave me the platform to do so. There were times I had disagreements with my students. There were times I was wrong, and there were times I was right. Hopefully, I was more right and less wrong. Today, where lies and alternative facts have become the norm, and viral movements may be no more than a mirage as they spiral out of control, irreparable damage may be the result. Today, it is far more difficult to communicate honestly, and I fully understand it is not always easy to be truthful, and at times it is very difficult to be truthful, especially for a teenager who wants to be accepted. How important is truth? How important is what you show to the world? In this age of Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, it is important to think about what truths you put out to everyone. Who are you? Who do you see when you look in the mirror? Who is the person you see on the internet? Did we pick the most flattering picture? How many likes did we receive? Does our status update show us having a great time, or are we covering the truth? Truth is powerful. It is important to be who we are with honesty and integrity. How often you lie and who you lie to reveals a great deal about you. Honesty is personal and self-reflecting. Honesty is imperative. Therefore, I ask you to be brave and not look back or down. It is okay to be confused. It is not okay to make up facts and lies. See what you can see, act upon it. You have a blank screen. Use that screen, contribute and educate. Use that screen to grow. And in the end, rely upon the truth, because above all else, truth matters. That is the greatest lesson that I learned during my years at Hatboro Horsham High School. Thank you.
I'm going to make a slight adjustment in our program. Marilyn Sufer was unable to join us, so I do have some information that I'm going to share. However, we're about 15 minutes away from the bell ringing and our students will be leaving. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask Dr. Gerald Strock. I'm going to introduce him so that he can speak to our students as well. Dr. Strock. As the superintendent of schools at Hatboro Horsham School District, he played a significant role in the experiences that 1,600 plus students that attend this high school every day have every day. Dr. Strock's contributions and service to the Hatboro Horsham School District reach far and wide. As the superintendent here for 17 years, which is something that you just don't find anymore, he was able to affect the climate of this district in a positive way. He brought modernizations to the Hatboro Horsham community in a fiscally responsible way that allowed for the construction of this very high school in 1991-92 school year. I was privileged to move into this building as a junior and spent my final 2 years at high school here. Under his leadership, we achieved national blue ribbon recognition. The block schedule model of instruction was implemented, and it put Hatboro Horsham High School on the proverbial map as the first high school in Pennsylvania to implement such a design. And here we are 25 years later, and the block style schedule is still in place. His advocacy for obtaining federal reimbursement funds through congressional acts was a hallmark in managing the local tax burden on Hatboro and Horsham residents. He was an executive board member and president of the Pennsylvania Superintendents Association. He was named the Pennsylvania Superintendent of the Year in 1993 and initiated the creation of the Hatboro Horsham Education Foundation. An active member in Horsham Rotary, certified pilot who is engaged in numerous Angel Flight missions, and an amazing carpenter who has built multiple homes from floor to ceiling. He's also mentored aspiring young school administrators through his work as a former professor at LaSalle University in the education department. Now in retirement, he has returned to the Horsham area to live close to family, friends, and the community that he embraced. Dr. Strzok has left an imprint on the Hatboro Horsham School District through his service, vision, innovation, and commitment to our community. So, to Dr. Gerald Strzok, congratulations on your induction into the Hatboro Horsham Hall.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I'm very appreciative of being honored here today, and I want to thank all the members of the Hall of Fame committee for my nomination. Today, I mainly want to address the Hatboro Horsham students, as well as acknowledge and thank all my friends, colleagues, and my family who came today to support me. Students, this morning I'm going to try something. I want to make a comparison for you between my past and your present and future. I believe there's too much negativity in the world today, so I want to give you a little encouragement. I was successful as the superintendent of Hatboro Horsham School District for many reasons. Main reason for my success was due to the terrific staff, the positive attitude of the vast majority of students and their parents, and a supportive community. I was fortunate to be able to surround myself with individuals who knew a lot more about many things than I did. So my first recommendation for you would be to always surround yourself with good people who know more than you do, who are willing to challenge you and to tell you that you may be wrong and why. During my lifetime, I've had many interests beyond my career. Let me share a few of them with you. I was a member, president, and captain of a fire and rescue company, and assistant civil defense director for Franklin County. I taught basic and advanced firefighting and rescue practices, ran an underwater rescue team, was an instructor for the American Red Cross. I was a commercial instrument-rated flight instructor, checked pilot for the Civil Air Patrol in Doylestown, and flew Angel flights in eastern United States and southern Canada. I'm sharing this with you because I want to strongly encourage you that when selecting your interests in life, please try to pick a few things that will help those around you who are in need of your help. The good that you will do for others, for other people, will make the world a much better place, and it will reward you in more ways than you might believe. During your lifetime, you're going to face tremendous changes. Here are two predictions of many that I will make for your future. In 30 years, more than 50% of today's jobs will not exist. because they will have been replaced by technology. Second, there's a good chance the job that you'll have in 30 years doesn't exist today. So what have I experienced in my life? Well, my wife Susan was asked by one of her friends how we met, and she said she found me on crapkicker.com. And I know what you're thinking. Now, I know she's joking because .com didn't exist when we met. It wasn't because I wasn't a crap kicker. I was raised on a fruit and dairy farm. I was 5 years old when we got electric in the house and 7 years old when we got indoor plumbing. At age 10, my family got a new device called the telephone. It had a crank handle. Our phone line was shared by 5 other families whose pastime was listening to other people's conversations. It was an early example of wiretapping, I guess. I attended a 3-room elementary school, a 2-room middle school, and a high school with 8 rooms. No labs and no library. There were 25 students in my graduating class, although there were 41 when we started 7th grade. Talk about a high dropout rate. After my first year of college, I went to work in a pie factory to earn and save up money to finish college. I ended up working there for 9 years. During those 9 years, I got married, had 2 children, put my wife and then eventually myself through college. So what do these experiences of my experiences mean for you? First, I did things the hard way far too often, and I made a lot of unnecessary mistakes. I learned that doing things my way without seeking advice or just plain ignoring good advice made for some very painful learning experiences. Now, believe it or not, you're going to see more dramatic and significant changes in your lifetime than I have seen in mine. These changes will be more rapid and more profound. I encourage you to embrace and adapt to change, and whatever you do, try not to do things the hard way. You're very fortunate because you have the privilege of being educated in one of the finest school districts in the country. If you've applied yourself and put forth a good effort, you are far more prepared to face the changes in your life than I ever was in mine. And if you haven't, it's never too late to start. Lifelong learning will be an essential part of your future. There's one last bit of information I'll tell you about myself. My IQ is about 116. Out of school, my SAT scores was 840. That is nothing any of you would ever call outstanding. I'm pretty average when it comes to academics. I certainly would never have been considered for an enrichment program. Being superintendent here was a great privilege. Next to being married to my wonderful wife, Susan, it is the best thing that ever happened to me. My whole family has been involved with the school district. I'm happy to tell you that my grandchildren, Nick, Emily, and Sawyer, are all working hard as students in the district. They are doing terrific, and Susan and I are very proud of them. In closing, I ask you to think about the following. Curious people often wonder about things. There are 4 graduates of Hatboro Horsham High School that I know pretty well, and I often wonder about them a lot. For example, I wonder if my daughter Jennifer, when she was working the perfume counter at Macy's 3 years after graduating Hatboro Horsham, ever thought she would earn a bachelor's and master's degree and be working as a speech clinician at a special education center in suburban Philadelphia. And I wonder if her husband Milt, when he was working an outbound Marine Boy Scout camp near Key West, ever thought he would be department head of the social studies department here. And I wonder if my daughter Sarah, when she was a student here and in the band and in school plays, ever thought she would have an MBA and be working as a business computer analyst for Prudential. And I wonder if her husband Eric, when he was driving a concrete truck or installing stamped concrete patios in Horsham for his father's concrete company, ever thought he would have an MBA be in charge of bomb-proofing the new trade towers building in New York City, and currently head up the technology and nuclear power division of a national concrete company out of Baltimore. Students, I believe most of us here today are just ordinary, average people who have inside us this tremendous potential to do amazing things. For sure, the key to your success is in your hands. And I know that each of you have the resources and possess the ability to do what you need to do to succeed. Your life will be filled with many wonderful experiences, and you can be unbelievably successful no matter what changes you may face during your lifetime. May each of you accomplish more than you could ever possibly imagine. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope I've given you something to wonder about. Have a terrific life.
Thank you. For all of our students, we're going to allow you to go ahead and get to your third period class, hats, lunch. And for everybody else here, we have one more person that we're going to recognize. All right. Thank you. Allow me to introduce our final recipient, who, as I mentioned, was unable to be with us this evening. For many educators here and everywhere, most times the decision to go into education was originated because of a few teachers who had an impact on their lives. For me, Marilyn Sufer was one of about 5 people who I can point to and say, that's why I do what I do. Her influence on my professional path was critical. After college, I became a social studies teacher prior to becoming an administrator, and having her as a teacher showed me how powerful the role of a teacher could be. For 32 years in the Hatboro Horsham School District, a diminutive woman with a mighty and demonstrative voice taught thousands of students the importance of social science and civic responsibility. She was hell-bent on issues of civil rights, a staunch proponent of students advocating for themselves, and was not afraid to push you when she knew that you were not pushing yourself. Like many of my classes, I was kind of a class clown and pushed the envelope to the point where Ms. Sufer and my father were on speed dial. To this day, she still asks me about my parents, compliments them on how they raised me and how proud they should be. You can have a conversation with Marilyn Sufer, and she can recall students' names, stories, and events from 40 years ago as if it happened last week. She's unable to join us today to accept her award. I asked her permission to accept on her behalf. I had the chance to speak with her repeatedly over the last month. She lives in Florida during this part of the year, and her commitment to working with people has not waned. She recently took a job at a local library where she can use her expertise and is assisting underrepresented communities. She was very clear with me, and I included the quote in her presentation. I was most fortunate to teach wonderful students from whom I learned so much. It was not history I learned from them. I learned how to be a better person and a wiser teacher. Fortunately, I shared this revelation with them. As I mentioned, because she was unable to attend and I will accept on her behalf, I wanted to provide a quick, true meaning and representation of who Ms. Sufer is and what she meant. So I asked one of our 2015 inductees, Mr. Jamie Haddon, to provide a quick summary of Ms. Sufer. Mr. Haddon wrote the following for me. I write this letter from the perspective of one of 4 family members across 2 generations that were lucky enough to have Ms. Sufer as a teacher, mentor, and now friend. During our time at HH, we all had many teachers, some we feel indifferent about, some we loathe. And the special, again, I didn't write this, all right? And the special ones that stand out to us as the best of the best. A good teacher can make or break a school year for a student. Some of us are lucky enough to have that very special one that has planted lifelong seeds of learning. So I want to thank Mrs. Sufer for doing all of these things. 1, being hard on me. Sometimes I just needed that extra push of confidence, or other times for someone to sit me down and be real with me. I appreciate all the times you gave me constructive criticism, even if it meant extra hours of work for me. 2, being honest with me. That paper that I wrote at midnight the night before it was due, I knew it wasn't good. Thank you for being able to kindly tell me I could do better and that it wasn't up to my full potential. Number 3, making class fun. Sometimes class can be painfully boring. However, you always created fun and engaging activities and assignments that made learning fun. Most importantly, your lectures included your real-world travels, places I had only seen on TV and read in books. With you, the world became smaller. Going the extra mile is number 4. Ms. Sufer is an icon in our family, as my father, my aunt, my uncle all have their favorite stories. The best one to me is when my uncle had mononucleosis. He missed many weeks of school, and Ms. Sufer so cared about his education that she came to my grandparents' house after school each day to teach him lessons. She didn't do it for money, she did it because she cared. The interesting thing is, she didn't just teach him social studies. She got lesson plans from every class that he missed, and she taught all of his courses over the course of that time. Treating me the way I needed, number 5. I wasn't a standout student, wasn't a standout athlete, probably just average at best and all. She never made me feel like there was a student better or worse than me. There were no favorites. However, I saw care and attention customized for each student. And finally, for remembering me. I discounted her memory and love of her students for a long time. For a kid who never thought he'd go to college, when I got there, I excelled. I knew she had a hand in my current work ethic. So I sent her a couple thank you notes back in those early 90s and completely forgot about the memory. 2 years ago, when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I received a phone call from Ms. Sufer. She was both congratulatory on the honor and apologetic that she was unable to make it. She told me that day that she owed me lunch when she returned. Quite honestly, I was delighted in the phone call and completely forgot about the opportunity for lunch until several months later. We sat, we had lunch. She remembered my classmates and even where they sat in the room around me. But the best memory was at the end of our lunch, she slid my thank you notes back across the table to me. She had not forgotten. Of course she hadn't. Ms. Sufer, congratulations on a long overdue honor. Many lives and at least 2 generations of Haddons, if not more, have been impacted by your zeal to educate. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for Miss Marilyn Sue. This morning, we had an opportunity to recognize 7 very distinct individuals, all with different stories and paths to success. Yet the one thing that remains common is the time that they spent in the schools in this district, raised children and grandchildren in this district. Those experiences helped to shape who they were and what they have become. As a graduate and the principal of this fine high school, that truly makes me proud. More importantly, it sends a positive message to our students of what is attainable through hard work post-HH. To all of our inductees and your families, congratulations. While not a professional sports Hall of Fame, music Hall of Fame, Hollywood Walk of Fame, this is indeed an honor, and you are all deserving. I want to thank you. Thank you for your vision and your leadership. Thank you for your dedication and your commitment. Thank you for your service and your community approach. Thank you for representing Hatboro Horsham School District in such fine fashion everywhere you go. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in one final round of applause for all members of the 2017 induction class.